On my week 3 meal planning video, I talked about a Greek meatball that my family loves. So I figured we should make that today. So while I'm making it for my family, I'd invite you to make it with me. We love Greek meatballs in my house, and meatballs are wonderful because they really can change up the flavor of ground beef so that it doesn't seem like you're serving hamburger again. So what I'm starting with is 1 3/4 pounds of ground beef. This is 80-20 ground beef, which is about perfect for what we prefer. And I'm making this really quick and easy. So I'm using frozen spinach, and I had it in a colander and thought I had most of the water out, but I don't. So I'm gonna give it another squeeze because you do want to get most of the moisture out. So that didn't help a lot, did it? Let me put this in. And what I've done, this is a Green Giant frozen spinach, and it is a 9-ounce container. And I just put it in the microwave for 4 or 5 minutes and then drained it. You need to squeeze it out, as I didn't. And this is some fresh mint. And what I have here is about a tablespoon of freshly chopped mint. And it's just fresh mint leaves. It may be a little more than a tablespoon. Even if you don't care for mint, don't leave it out. When I made this recipe for the first time, I wasn't sure about the mint, but it really gives it kind of an unexpected flavor that you're gonna love. This is about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna add that in. This is onion. You can use fresh chopped onion. This is about this is about a tablespoon. I remember now measuring it, a tablespoon of finely minced onion. I've said it before, I like using dehydrated onion because as it rehydrates, it grabs the fat from the beef and really has just a fantastic flavor. I'm going to add some garlic. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons. You cannot have good Greek food without good garlic. So this is 2 generous teaspoons. It's hard to measure. 2 teaspoons of garlic, fresh garlic, and you can use garlic powder if you don't have the fresh in. And then this is feta cheese. We really like feta at my house, and you can't have good Greek food without good feta. This is already in crumbles, but the crumbles are fairly large. This is 4 ounces, and because I have about 2 pounds of beef, it was actually 1.84 pounds, I'm gonna put the whole thing in. And as I come across these larger chunks, I'll break them up a little bit. And now comes the fun part. I just have to get my hands in it and mix it all up. Can you use a spatula? Sure you can. It's probably not gonna mix quite as well. So I'm just gonna mix it with my hands. You don't need any other liquid. There's still enough liquid from the spinach. And you can just see I'm mixing this up really, really well. Now, when I get this mixed up, I'm going to do it as meatballs. You could do it as small meatloaves in little mini pans. And I like to do my meatloaves in mini pans anyway because it cooks faster. This is also a dish that's really easy to prep ahead. You can mix all the ingredients and bake the meatballs right before you serve them. You can bake them and warm them up. You can also bake them and freeze them, and I really do enjoy doing that. If I'm doing some batch cooking on the weekend, I'll make several different types of meatballs, and then I'll freeze them, put them in Ziploc baggies and label them. And that's something you can take out of the freezer and put in lunches, and by the time we get to lunch, it's thawed. You can use it when you're traveling. Again, put it in a cooler or just take it with you, and by the time it's thawed, it's great. You can warm it, it's fine. And then sometimes it doesn't even need warming. But anyway, so this is something that's really great to make ahead. And my kids know too, especially my daughter who loves this. She knows that it's something she can pull out of the freezer herself and warm up. And you can take just a few out at a time if you like. Okay, I think I've got that mixed up pretty well. And so you just make it in meatballs. And I'm not gonna do the whole batch in meatballs because I wanna show you what I serve with it. I'm gonna do just enough of these to get them in the oven. With it, I'm going to make a tzatziki sauce. Now, tzatziki is just a cucumber sauce. And it's so wonderful if you have fresh cucumbers from the garden or from your neighbor's garden or from the grocery store. It doesn't take a lot of cucumber, but I'm going to, let me make just a few more of these. And I don't have it really mixed up incredibly well, but that's okay. I'll again do it as I go. I need minions to help me do this. And you can see I'm making them a little more than an inch, about an inch actually in diameter. And they'll cook fairly quickly in the oven at 375. They'll cook in about 10 to 12 minutes if you make them this size. And there's a big glob of spinach. Let me fix that. My son would never eat that. Okay, finish this one, and then I will switch over to making the tzatziki. So let me just slide that aside. All right, so let's make the tzatziki sauce. This is really the yummiest part of this whole thing. So I'm going to start with about 1.25 cups of sour cream. You can use more or less. I always err on the side of making more, but that's truly all of the sour cream I had this afternoon. When you have the sour cream, you're going to add to that cucumber. Now this is just regular cucumber, and I chopped up 2 of those, and it's about 1 cup of cucumber. Okay, so I'm going to stick this in here and clean that out. I'm also going to wipe my hands really quick and get rid of the ground beef. I just realized I'm dealing with ground beef that's raw. Okay, sorry about that. But I had the raw ground beef. I should have paused it. Okay, so I've got in here just over 1.25 cups of sour cream and 1/2 cup of very finely chopped cucumber. And you can see how pretty that is, just as it is. I'm going to use a teaspoon of fresh garlic, because again, you can't have good Greek without good garlic. And this is deviating a little bit from the original recipe. My grandmother always said, no recipe going to tell me how to cook. And I tend to follow that example, for better or for worse. My husband says I never cook the same thing twice, and it's probably true. I want 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, and I've squeezed a whole lemon, which should give me a tablespoon. Actually, it's a little more than a tablespoon. So that's 1 small lemon that gave me a tablespoon of juice. And it smells yummy as always. Now the tzatziki sauce is one of those things that the longer it sits, the better it tastes. So don't be in a hurry to try this. In fact, you might want to make it first, then make your meatballs so all the flavors can kind of sing together. It calls for onion, and I'm going to use dehydrated onion. This is dehydrated red onion. It's my absolute favorite. And I'm going to use it because, again, as it rehydrates, it absorbs some of the moisture and just gives it a really nice flavor. That's 1 teaspoon, and I'm going to have to dig to get the rest of it, and that's the rest of it. And that's the part that really needs time to rehydrate and sing. Okay, we finished off that bottle, so I need to make sure I put dehydrated onion on my list again. And the dehydrated purple onion gives it a great flavor as opposed to just plain onion. I've got a few more spices to add. Cumin is one of them, and we love cumin at my house. And I need back my teaspoon. Ground cumin, and this gives it just a really nice flavor. So I'm going to use a short teaspoon, not quite a lot. I don't want to overpower it, but about 3/4 of a teaspoon of cumin. And it calls for fresh dill. I don't have fresh dill. This is the dill. I don't have fresh dill, so I'm using some dry dill, and I'm going to use about a teaspoon of that. Again, I'm going to do a short teaspoon. The dill is truly, the dill and the cucumber are fantastic. If you've ever eaten at a Greek restaurant, had a gyro and had the white sauce, then you had tzatziki, and it's spelled with a T. It's TZA. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention that be sure to use full fat sour cream, no low fat or reduced fat here. The full fat cream. And this is cilantro. And I didn't have It actually called for coriander, and I'm using the cilantro because it's essentially the same thing. And this is a teaspoon of cilantro. You could use fresh cilantro if you wanted to. Okay, so you want to give this a whirl, and you can see there's just a lot of great seasonings in there. This sauce, this white sauce, is great on the fish, really good with lamb. And although I used ground beef in those meatballs, it is fantastic with lamb. The original recipe calls to use chicken or ground chicken, and I'm not crazy about that. I'd much rather use ground beef or lamb, but lamb is pricey. Sometimes I'll mix the lamb with the ground beef just to make it go a little further. So let's try that. Oh, it's fantastic. It needs some salt, which I don't think the recipe called for. But it does need some salt. And I'm going to do about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And it should be perfect. All right, again, we need to put it in the fridge. That's perfect. We need to put it in the fridge and let it all kind of get to know each other, have a little housewarming party in there. And by the time our meatballs are ready, that is going to be delicious. So we made our meatballs, those are in the oven. We made our tzatziki, and that's resting in the fridge. So what are we going to serve with the meatballs? Well, zoodles are always a good idea. And what's a zoodle? Remember when we did meal planning the other day, I took a zucchini and I used my spiralizer to make noodles. We call them zoodles because they're zucchini noodles. These have been in the fridge a day or two, which is fine. It just means they dry out a little bit and you've got less moisture to deal with. So I've got my cast iron skillet on high, and I'm going to throw some ghee in. If you haven't used ghee, ghee is simply clarified butter. I'm using a Trader Joe's brand because it's not terribly expensive and it's really good. I'm going to put a generous amount of ghee in here, and sometimes to get all the goodie out, I will stick this thing in the microwave and then it just pours right out. But ghee, the wonderful thing about ghee is it has this great quality where it's like butter in terms of flavor. It's very rich and sweet and creamy, but it also has a higher smoke point than butter. And so it's not going to burn as I'm working with it. So it's great for frying things up or roasting vegetables. In this case, we're just going to take the zoodles and put them in the hot ghee. And it won't take long at all for these to be tender. Now there's nothing on these, it's just noodles. And I don't want them mushy by any stretch of the imagination. I just want them buttery and soft. This will take really about 35 to 45 seconds. I could season them depending on what I'm using. I could just put a little salt, and probably that's all I will put. And don't over stir them, but it's a medium hot heat that I have them on. And they're getting more tender. You can see it. It doesn't take long because when you spiralize it, you increase the surface of the vegetables, and so it absorbs the ghee pretty rapidly and it cooks pretty rapidly. And you can see how wilty that is. So let me turn that off the heat, and I'll grab our meatballs and I'll be right back. Okay, the meatballs are ready, and so are my zoodles. So let's just get some zoodles, and we'll put them on the plate. I've already got some mint, some fresh mint on there just to make it look pretty. And you don't want to overdo the zoodles because zucchini does have carbs. And this is just a butter sauce. I'm going to pick up a couple of meatballs, and these are very, very filling. As you know, most high-fat foods are. So there are the finished meatballs. And then I'm going to put just a dollop of tzatziki in the center and a little on each side. And there's a minion who wants to be a taste tester. Zoodles with Greek meatballs and tzatziki sauce. Hope you enjoy.